Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, it's interesting because I haven't actually been told specifically what I've done, which has resulted in me being removed from my committee position, which was head of daytime. I started a podcast in September in which I interviewed Charlie Bentley-Astor, who's a detransitioner. I then also interviewed Graham Linehan and I wrote an article for his Substack. And shortly after that, I was told that I had been suspended and the university union started an investigation into me. And that very quickly became apparent to me that it was an interrogation of my gender-critical views rather than any sort of misconduct that I had been alleged to.
Right.
And Graham Linehan has been outspoken on issues relating to transgender ism, whatever you want to call it, gender ideology. And so perhaps just by having associated yourself with him as a controversial figure, that was why the investigation happened, you suspect?
Yes, and already it's quite clear that guilt by association is a crime that you can commit within university societies. I actually purchased my free speech union membership way before this all happened, when a friend helped me edit the episode with Charlie, and he got in trouble with a separate society who told him that he must disassociate himself from me, and if he didn't, further measures would be taken. So at that point, I thought, wow, I better put some damage control in place and purchase my membership in case anything happens to me.
So this decision is made by the student union, right? Is that made up of fellow students? Or who's making this call?
Well, that's actually part of my appeal. So the process has been completely improper. They haven't followed their own guidelines. There are two different guidelines as to whether a complaint is dealt with the society itself, so Leeds Student Radio, or the union, and it's basically been a mishmash of both. So it's been an improper procedure, but it is, as far as I'm aware, it's the student union who's decided to remove me.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 5th of January, and this is the weekend on GB News. And thank you very much for your company. Now, let it snow, or maybe not. Central and northern England remains under an amber warning for snow, with disruption spreading across the country. Airports and roads have already been closed, but how are you coping with the cold snap? And Wes Streeting defends the government's decision to not launch a national inquiry into the Rotherham grooming gang scandal, saying there's already been one, exclamation mark. The Health Secretary did outline his support for the victims, encouraging more local authorities to pursue justice for those affected. And a new poll says the Prime Minister's popularity has plummeted in the 6 months. More than 2/3 of those asked say he is doing badly. But with rumours of an early general election now circulating, does he have enough time to turn it round? I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. So thank you for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciating your time. You don't want to go anywhere, by the way. The weather is awful. It's either raining very heavily or it's freezing and snowing. So you may as well sit in front of the telly and keep me company, because this show is not about me. It is all about you and your views, what you want to talk about. What are your thoughts on the big stories we're discussing? And there are some really, really big stories coming up. We have got another packed show for you, so you really don't want to move a muscle. And it is incredibly easy to get involved. You simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay and join in our conversation. I say our conversation because we have a brilliant panel today for you, keeping you company. Mail Online reporter Lettice Bromowski and panel political consultant and playwright Emma Burnell. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies. But before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get those news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Thanks, Dawn. A very good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. I'm Sophia Hill with your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Our top story, heavy snow overnight, is causing disruption across the country. Manchester and Liverpool Airport have now reopened their runways, but Leeds Bradford Airport's runways remain closed until further notice and they're cleared of the snow. The Met Office had issued 2 amber weather warnings for England and Wales, forecasting 3 to 7 centimetres of snow and rain in lower areas. One warning covering most of northern England, including Leeds, Sheffield and the Lake District, is still in place until midnight tonight. Rural communities have been warned that they could be cut off due to the weather, with some areas facing up to a foot of snowfall. UK Health Security Agency had issued cold weather health alerts, which will remain in place for all of England ahead of a week of low temperatures. More NHS patients who need elective care will be able to decide where they are treated under new government plans to cut waiting lists. This falls under the new upgrades coming to the NHS app, which Health Secretary Wes Streeting says will shift the NHS into the digital age. Experts have welcomed the move, but warn that digital innovations must not create new barriers and come at the expense of excluding those without smartphones. Now, GB News can exclusively reveal that the Prime Minister ignored a Rotherham whistleblower, Jane Senior's, bullying complaint after she exposed child abuse and corruption while he was leader of the opposition in 2020. GB News national reporter Charlie Peters told us the latest earlier on.
We've seen correspondence sent by Sir Keir Starmer's office that simply says, unfortunately, we won't be able to facilitate a meeting. Oh, but here is an online form for processing complaints. But fundamentally, I think what we've seen as a political reaction to this story, with both Kemi Badenoch from the Conservatives and Rupert Lowe from Reform and plenty of other commentators as well, they're all saying that, well, Jane Senior did have that national hero status. She was being bullied. Why didn't you take the time to meet with her, especially considering the reputation and fear that people had around the Labour Party and the CSE scandal and all the cover-ups?
A Labour Party spokesperson has responded to claims, saying all complaints are treated seriously and thoroughly assessed in line with our rules and procedures. Complaints are assessed via a specific process independent of the leader's office, and this was clearly signposted in response to this correspondence at the time. Now, Nigel Farage has vowed to target the Conservative leader's seat at the next election, accusing her of being rude and a ranting conspiracy theorist. At Reform's UK East of England conference in Chelmsford, he held up a phone showing the party's membership surpassing 170,000.
Oh! The ticker! And the ticker says 170,000! Kemi, are you watching on the live stream? Did we deliberately fiddle it so that it happened during my speech? Did it hell? It's happening, folks, because this party is on the march.
This comes following claims from Kemi Badenoch that Reform's online membership figures are fake. That's despite several news outlets reporting that the membership data is accurate. Farage told supporters he was offended by accusations of being a fraudster, adding, "I've never been dishonest and I never will be." He also invited supporters to an event later this month to prove the numbers are real, adding that her criticism had fuelled a surge in new members. And finally, more than 3,200 grey seal pups have been counted at the Norfolk coastal breeding grounds. While numbers remain high, this year's final count was 370 less than last year, possibly due to the seals finding new breeding grounds elsewhere. The pupping season generally starts at the beginning of November and finishes by the end of January, attracting thousands of visitors each winter. So if you're in the area, keep an eye out. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back in half an hour. Now it's back to Dawn.
Thank you very much. Now let's get straight into today's stories, because we do have a very, very busy show for you. We are starting with the weather, because it's British what we do, and it is January. Snow and rain have battered Britain today, with most of northern and central England remaining under an amber weather alert. Liverpool and Manchester airports have been forced to close their runways, while drivers have been warned to make minimal trips and take emergency provisions with them. But the weather is also taking a turn in Northern Ireland, where GB News reporter Doogie Beattie is waiting for us. Doogie, that looks very, very Christmassy, and I can't say that. It's actually 12th night now. It's 2 weeks too late, isn't it? Doogie, where are you and what's happening there? Doogie, can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, you're. But yes, we're here on the side of Magic Hill, just outside Newry. This is Northern Ireland's biggest water supply, Spelga Dam. It goes down into Belfast. Yeah, as you can see, it is no way. In fact, if we just drop the camera there and look and see how much that is under my feet, there you go. That's how much snow we have here in Northern Ireland at this minute in time. and round the Newry area that this snow has came. We've driven up here, and actually at the top of the hill there's a lot of children playing in sleighs and so forth, flying down the hill. Fancy to go myself, Dawn, but yeah, there was no signal up there, and that's my excuse, and I'm keeping to it. I have 2 jackets on me. I haven't put on 2 stone over Christmas. But yes, roads are very treacherous at this minute in time. When you're out and about driving, please be very careful. The rest it's really snow-free at this minute in time. There are patches of it, but in around the Newry area there is some traffic, mainly because of what you can see behind us. And really, if we just get the camera to swing round there, you can see the Spelga Dam in behind us, just the big gates of it opening up in there. And it is quite the scene, I can say. And it is the first time I have ever been up here during the snow, and it is picturesque and very beautiful. There is travel disruption. Normal rules apply. If you're going for a flight or anything, please turn up early. The affected at this moment in time. But besides for that, we're getting a lovely picturesque snow covering in Northern Ireland.
But obviously there has been major travel disruption, certainly across northern parts of England. Manchester and Liverpool airports have both been affected. Do you know any more about that travel situation, Doogie?
Well, the travel situation across England, of course, is much worse because that snow over the lowland areas rather than the high mountainous areas, and that will cause disruption, and it will stay for a day or two. Have dropped considerably in the last 24 hours, meaning that snow, of course, will harden and stay, and if further snowfall comes through, well, it will really disrupt the whole travel system in Britain. I heard Stephen saying this morning he had trouble getting into work because of the motorways down into London. So really, you know, take your time, plan ahead for your journey, and drive carefully on the roads, because a lot of them are not treated, and some of them that were treated have frozen over again, and snow's coming back on top of them. So just because you've seen a gritter earlier on today, it doesn't mean that the road is safe or is safe to travel on as you normally would.
Brilliant. That's Doogie Beattie looking very festive for us. Unfortunately, just a little bit too late in Northern Ireland and Newry. Thank you very much, Doogie, for joining us. Now, but do be careful, because the weather is... We've literally got all the seasons in one day. In London and the South East at the moment, it's very wet and ridiculously warm, despite going down to the real feel of -6 overnight. We believe the Manchester-Liverpool football match is on at the moment, hasn't been called off like there was some doubts. So they've announced that is on. So if you are travelling to that game, please do make your way there safely. Now, let's see what my wonderful panel make of this. A reporter for the Mail Online, Letis Bromotsky, and political consultant and playwright Emma Burnell. Ladies, we talk about the weather a lot in this country, and it is January, but the situation at the moment, certainly in the northern parts of England, Letis, does seem to have been quite bad, with the airports closed down, football matches thankfully on, but, you know, was in doubt earlier on.
Yeah, exactly. You think this was the first time that this had happened, but this seems to happen all the time, and I can't believe we're still talking about it, still being shocked that we're not prepared for this, you know. It speaks really to the larger government way of handling this, and successive governments have done this, but it's a reactive approach, not a proactive approach. We are never prepared for the snow that comes, then the flooding that comes after it. I mean, look back to 2013 when there was severe flooding in Somerset, and then it later turned out that we'd actually cut funding in that area by 10% over those years. People die in these situations now, and it's shocking that we are still shocked by this weather.
It is a perennial favourite with us, isn't it? I was lucky enough to go to Iceland for my birthday in December, which was stunning.
Yeah.
But they literally cope with lava flowing over the road and just go, oh, we'll just go around that way. It's just lava in front of us. And sort of like, obviously, it's very cold and there's snow and ice all over the place. But the argument always goes that they're used to it. This is what happens in their country, in their climate, and climates like, you know, in Scandinavia. Whereas it's so rare here that in times when money is tight, spending a lot of money on preparing for it could be seen as a waste, seeing as it's not necessarily always that bad.
I think that is a perennial argument that's made. I don't think it's a fair argument. I think we are seeing more and more extreme weather events. We've had once-in-a-lifetime flooding at least 3 times in the last decade. And actually, when you're talking about a waste of money, Lettuce is quite right that we are reacting to these things and coming in and doing a very, very expensive clean-up job rather than mitigating. And actually, we need to do a lot more mitigation around floodplains. I mean, in terms of snows, we are seeing more snow, I think, than we used to. Maybe it just feels that way. I don't remember it snowing that much when I was a kid, but maybe... that was a very long time ago.
Even with snow
but with snow, I mean, there are things you can mitigate and there are things you can't. You can't get a plane in the air if it's snowing. Yes, that's a reasonable point. But on the other hand, I would say that the railways we could think about how to do the railways better and make sure that the tracks are more resilient.
And how do you think, Lettuce, we're treated in this country? I mean, some of the warnings we were given, I think, our West Streeting advised you to put an extra layer of clothing on.
Yeah.
And turn your heating up. Well, I mean, lots of pensioners were worried about turning their heating up, thanks to that advice, Wes. But it's also slightly patronising, isn't it?
It's definitely slightly patronising. And we have had these severe weather events, like I just said, like people have died in them. But I do think when it comes to the snow, like you were just mentioning, I was covering the weather last night, and Bristol Airport also had to suspend flights. And we were in the newsroom being like, oh, there must be a lot of snow. The videos come through and you can sort of still see the tarmac underneath it. And you think this is the tiniest amount of snow.
Oh, but isn't that the most dangerous, though? As I understand it, snow when it's very, very thin is actually a lot more skiddy than snow when it's thick and compact.
Oh, really? Well, that wasn't something I was aware of. But if that is the case, then maybe they are the right to do this. But you just think, if this tiny amount, when it gets more severe, of course everything shuts down. It's not just snow. In the summer, it got so hot that the railways started melting. Yeah. And in London, our drainage system is still the same system from the Victorian era.
Absolutely.
And there are so many little things that haven't been updated and modernised that eventually it's all going to go wrong.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. Where we have fallen down really badly over most of my lifetime, and as I've mentioned more than once, I'm very old.
No, you're not. You're seriously not that old.
I'm 50 in February, it feels it. And I feel every inch of that.
Tell me about it.
But I think we haven't done proper long-term infrastructure planning. I think I read somewhere that we haven't had a new reservoir since about 1993.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's certainly
and that,
in the
when you
Thames
think
water
about
area.
the change to demographics and population, we need to have this kind of infrastructure. There's quite a lot of people will hark back to the clip of Nick Clegg saying in 2012, well, we can't build a new nuclear reactor, it wouldn't be open until 2024. Then, of course, the Ukraine war happened, and so that would have been a really good thing to have done.
Yeah.
So I think we do need to be much better at long-term planning.
Yeah, it's priorities, though, isn't it? This is the problem. We have a finite amount of money. We have a black hole, evidently, that needs filling. And with snow and ice, possibly, at this rate. So it's where do we allocate the money, and are we all willing to pay more taxes to ensure that we are better prepared for these weather events?
Yeah, and I think that quote that you just mentioned sort of perfectly encapsulates this problem, is governments only think about their term. The next 4 years, the next 5 years. There isn't really any actual long-term planning because they think we'll just do the things we can do while we're in power and win the votes for now. And that's what every government seems to be doing. But actually, these things, I mean, it goes to other things like the roads, potholes. It was mentioned last year that it cost £14 billion to upgrade all the roads and all the potholes. That's absurd figures. And the longer that we let it go on, the worse these figures are going to get.
And Don, you're right about spending, but it's like everything. If you spend a bit more now, you save a lot more in future.
That would be common sense, wouldn't it? Lack of that around. But how are you coping out there? Let us know what you're doing, what it's like for you where you are today. And are you struggling to get to a sporting event, maybe going to the Manchester United-Liverpool game? Let us know how you're getting on gbnews.com/your say. And for those worried about road closure, flight cancellations and other breaking updates on the ongoing snowstorms, go to gbnews.com, and that has all the latest information there for you. And it is changing, obviously, on an hourly basis as the weather swings around the country. So please do check it out, certainly if you're planning on travelling any distance. OK, now I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's incredibly packed show, including the latest comments from the government on the ongoing grooming gang scandal, and you won't believe what they've had to say today. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
After the Hollywood ending that Wrexham Football Club have got, can Chorley FC benefit from a bit of the old celebrity magic dust?
I can't see why not. The guys have been down a few times now, and when they do come down, obviously they're bringing that with them. A little town like Chorley doesn't see much of the charts and big stars, so it's really nice to see them, and we always welcome them when they do come down.
And Mark, give us a flavour of the level of football. I understand you're in the National League North, right? That's 6 rungs down from the top flight. I mean, you're only just down the road from Manchester City, right? But I mean, give us a flavour of the two different worlds between your club and Man City.
Our players are all part-timers. So we've got kind of fitness coaches, we've got teachers, we've got all kinds of players who have full-time jobs alongside playing. Our average crowd is probably a tenth of what you get at Man City, probably even less than that. We get about 1,500 on a home game. The thing is, we know where we are and we understand where we are, and we are a real community club. Tonight, I'm ready now. I'm off to Marine, so off over to Merseyside. Playing the likes of Liverpool and Everton over on Merseyside would be kind of a dream come true. But we know where we are. We would just love to get to the Football League. So teams like Salford, Stockport County were in our division a couple of years ago, all flying now in the Football League. We just want to do the same. We sat down with the board last year and they told us the vision for the future, and that vision most definitely is that we want to be a Football League club. When we went to the Premier League, I know the boys have been saying that they 30 years will be in the Premier League and winning it. Well, let's hope we are, and let's hope I'm still around to see that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. We really appreciate your company, and it's really not worth going out because the weather is terrible. So let me know how you're coping this afternoon, whether you're under the rain clouds that seem to be permanently swathing London and the South East at the moment, or freezing. And we've just heard, I think, Leeds Airport has been shut now as well. So if you are travelling around in the north, please do take care and let us know how you're getting on. gbnews.com/your say. Now, on to the ongoing story. It's a hard talk, but we talk about it, we must, because politicians do seem to be reluctant to do anything about it, put it that way. Grooming gangs, of course. And GB News can reveal that Sir Keir Starmer ignored a Rotherham whistleblower's bullying complaint after she exposed the child abuse and corruption when he was leader of the opposition back in 2020. National and Investigations reporter, the brilliant Charlie Peters, spoke to Stephen Ann earlier today for this latest on his shocking story.
We've seen correspondence sent by Sir Keir Starmer's office that simply says, unfortunately, we won't be able to facilitate a meeting.
Right, OK, we are struggling to get that clip up, I believe. But this story is basically about a whistleblower at the time who's a Labour councillor, and she complained asking for a meeting with Keir Starmer and was told it wasn't actually, well, they didn't want to see her, they didn't want to talk to her, which I find pretty stunning. This is a lady called Jane Senior, and she's a youth services manager. And in 2020, when Sir Keir Starmer was leader of the opposition, he was asked to meet with Miss Senior, who was Labour council at the time, and said no, there wasn't any time to do so. Jane was awarded an MBE in recognition for her actions working with the abused children in the child grooming scandal. But it's quite astonishing that the leader of her party refused to talk to her at the time. And indeed, she alleges she was bullied by her own political party. This isn't the first time we've heard this from female members of the Labour Party, is it? So I still have Lettice and Emma with me. We'll bring you Charlie's full report as soon as we can get it back up. But Emma, this is, again, the story that's not going away, and nor should it.
No, it absolutely shouldn't. I think there are several complications with this particular part of the story, and I can take each part of it, and I think it's important to do so. First of all, one of the problems with this story is that it is being used as a political cudgel between two sides who just want to have a go at each other. And once again, both sides, I'm not putting this blame on either of those parties, are forgetting the young girls who are the victims in all of this. And they are who should be at the centre of this story. This is not a way of attacking left or right, Muslims or non-Muslim people who are paedophilic attackers. That shouldn't be the discussion. The discussion should be, how do we make sure that young and particularly vulnerable girls, most of these girls, particularly in the Rotherham scandal, were girls in care, are protected and are given the best possible chance in life, which includes not just protection, but boosting.
OK, so Lettice, I mean, to make sure this... I mean, it is still going on, by the way, but to make sure we do learn lessons and we try to stop this as much as we can, surely we do need an open national inquiry. Jess Phillips, who is the safeguarding minister, says that, no, this is the latest scandal arose when she said, no, Oldham, you have a local inquiry about it. So it's like being asked to mark your own homework.
Yeah, no, exactly. I do think there should be a national inquiry into this, and it's mainly because there has been such widespread and systemic failures that go across, the whole country here. If Oldham looks into their one, Rotherham looks into their one, it sort of separates them and makes them their own things, when actually they should be joined together. We need to join up the dots on this so that it doesn't happen again. And I think that realistically, this national inquiry, if it goes ahead, will uncover systemic failures in the police force, in social services, and likely in the government as well. And that's going to be quite hard for the public to stomach, the victims to stomach, because we already have an issue with trust in our institutions in this country. And
certainly in our police force, women
certainly in our police force. You look at the cases over the past few years, people abusing their power. Sarah Everard, the abuse of power that went on there was shocking and disgusting. And even then, you see racism within the police force, sexism. We've had loads of reviews into this, but ultimately we do need to be seeing some action now.
Now, the argument, Emma, is that, well, we've had reviews into it, the recommendations weren't acted upon. What is the point in having another one?
I mean, that's a reasonable argument. What should happen is that the recommendations should be acted on straight away. Whether there's then another more systemic review, I mean, I absolutely agree with Lettice that there is a serious systemic cultural problem that we all feel about the police force, and there's lots of talk about increasing police numbers. All in favour of that. Would love to see more bobbies on the beat. But there is a genuine question that I have asked myself and other women. Would you get into a police car with a single male officer?
Well, there was data that came out just this week, I believe, that said 45% of people would not call the police if their house was burgled because they do not trust them to act. That is a shocking statistic.
Well, and the reason you call the police is, frankly, to get the crime number so you can get your insurance, not because you believe that it's going to be solved.
I mean, look, it's been pretty much admitted that, politicians, councillors, police forces, many of them were involved in several ways about keeping this quiet, covering it up. So do you think there is a political reason that we will possibly not get a national inquiry?
No, I don't think that's what is going on. I think, again, it comes back to this sort of long-term, short-term money, finance thing. Public inquiries are by their nature quite expensive. If you've already had one and you're having to cut the budget of the Justice Department significantly already, you are faced with a choice between trying to deal with the court backlogs or having a public inquiry. And you said it yourself earlier, there is a limited pot of money.
Yeah, but I would actually personally rather...
Again, I'm not making a judgment. I'm saying that is the question that is being asked within that department.
I do think there's something to say here that Labour have, again, sort of underestimated the public reaction to this. And Jess Phillips coming out and just saying, no, we're not going to, Oldham, you can have your own inquiry. She's underestimated how many people feel affected by this story and how many people feel outraged that still nothing's been done. Even though the J Review came out in 2022, still those actions haven't been implemented.
So I think the reaction should be, we will implement the recommendations. Well, I don't think the reaction is necessary, we will set up yet another inquiry. But I think there are... definitely actions from that review that should be taken and need to be taken.
But they haven't been. And Jess Phillips, going back to, her constituency is a very high proportion of Muslim voters. We know she had terrible trouble in the election. She was getting abuse and threats of violence herself in her own constituency. Now, 80% of Muslims in this country are Labour voters. Do you think this is something the Labour Party are bearing in mind with opening this can of worms again?
I don't think so, no. I think that would be a bit of a harsh judgment to put on them at this point. We do know that back when this was going on, there were issues with people being concerned that they would be seen as racist. But since then, the Labour Party's come out, Keir Starmer, as prosecution says, they've come out, they have apologised for that. They've accepted responsibility for that. I don't believe that now they're still, I'm not protecting is the wrong word, but they're still trying to protect their own votes in this.
OK, Maggie Oliver did say that Keir Starmer was complicit in, as guilty as many people involved in this.
Well, I think, again, that's quite unfair, because actually when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, one of the things that he really focused on was changing, as a result of these scandals, the way that sexual assault cases are dealt with. He was the one who initiated the first prosecutions of the Rotherham gang, so I think that is quite unfair.
So why he keeps coming back to this...
In terms of the Jane Senior thing...
why is he ignoring his own counsellor, as she was at the time?
What my take on that is, and this is a very... I'm going to try and not sound like the most Labour insider person. Labour's internal processes, frankly, are a bit of a mess and have always been a bit of a mess. And there was a huge problem, particularly in the 2010s, particularly after 2015, about... The Labour's internal culture got nasty. It got really nasty. And people who were pro-Corbyn and people who were anti-Corbyn were at each other's throats constantly within the party. And that then got weaponised through the complaint system. So the complaint system was then taken into this independent space because it was seen as being used by people as a political cudgel rather than a disciplinary process. Having done that, it would then be very hard as the leader of the party and a political actor within the party to say, yeah, but on this occasion, I will meet this person who was not complaining that she was being, she was complaining about being bullied, rather than complaining about there not being action on the road. So it's. I know that all sounds ridiculous, but that is, I suspect, the process that happened.
I also think there's something to say on this, that Labour thought that, in their minds, they might have thought they'd handled the situation from giving out the guidance, from having the reviews. The real reason we're talking about this again, obviously now everyone's outraged, is because Elon Musk has been tweeting about it a lot on Twitter, or on X, sorry, and it's sort of created this whole new stir around the story, and he's
It's a new story around an old story.
Yeah.
But it's an old story that is still going on today.
Well, it is. Let's hope that that's not the case, because, I mean, I'm sure there's still child abuse happening, but in terms of the the processes that led to people overlooking what happened in Rotherham, there have been some changes in the system, and I can only hope, and it may be a naive hope, I accept that people are better about safeguarding.
Right, OK. Let's... Wes Streeting, who was talking about this morning, Health Secretary, had to say when allegations of Sir Keir Starmer ignoring a whistleblower were put to him by Camilla Tominey.
Keir opened up a number of historic cases where perpetrators thought they'd gotten away with it. He opened up historic cases to go after those people. He put in place specialist rape prosecutors to build the evidence base to make sure that convictions, which are notoriously hard to achieve in this area, actually came to pass. One of the reasons Keir Starmer came into government, into politics, is because he recognised that the courts can only do so much. The police and the courts need to be given the powers, the tools and the resources to do the job. And that's what, as Prime Minister, he's committed to deliver.
OK, well, let me know what you think about that. gbnews.com/your say. Do you think the girls have been sacrificed on the altar of people keeping their political jobs? Let me know. gbnews.com/your say. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's plenty more coming up on today's show, including how the public appear to be losing patience with the Prime Minister, and that's according to a new poll. But first, let's get the news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Thank you, Dawn. A very good afternoon. It's just gone 1:30. I'm Sophia Hill with your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Our top story, heavy snow overnight is causing disruption across the country. Manchester and Liverpool Airport have now reopened their runways, but Leeds Bradford Airport's runways remain closed until cleared of snow. The Met Office had issued 2 amber weather warnings for England and Wales, forecasting 3 to 7 centimetres of snow, with rain in lower areas. One warning covering most of northern England, including Leeds, Sheffield and the Lake District, is in place until midnight tonight. Rural communities have been warned that they could be cut off due to the weather, with some areas facing up to a foot of snowfall. UK Health Security Agency has issued cold weather health alerts, which will remain in place for all of England ahead of a week of low temperatures. More NHS patients who need elective care will be able to decide where they are treated under new government plans to cut waiting lists. This falls under the new upgrades coming to the NHS app, which Health Secretary Wes Streeting says will shift the NHS into the digital age. Experts have welcomed the move, but warn that digital innovations must not create new barriers and come at the expense of excluding those without a smartphone. Action will also be taken to tackle missed appointments, another costly problem facing the health service. And GB News can exclusively reveal that Sir Keir Starmer ignored a Rotherham whistleblower, Jane Senior's bullying complaint after she exposed child abuse and corruption while he was leader of the opposition in 2020. GB News national reporter Charlie Peters told us the latest earlier on.
We've seen correspondence sent by Sir Keir Starmer's office that simply says, unfortunately, we won't be able to facilitate a meeting. Oh, but here is an online form for processing complaints. But fundamentally, I think what we've seen as a political reaction to this story, with both Kemi Badenoch from the Conservatives and Rupert Lowe from Reform and plenty of other commentators as well, they're all saying that, well, Jane Senior did have that national hero status. She was being bullied. Why didn't you take the time to meet with her, especially considering the reputation and fear that people had around the Labour Party and the CSE scandal and all the cover-ups?
Well, a Labour Party spokesperson has responded to claims, saying all complaints are treated seriously and thoroughly assessed in line with our rules and procedures. Complaints are assessed via a specific process independent of the leader's office, and this was clearly signposted in response to this correspondence at the time. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It remains unsettled through the rest of Sunday and much of next week as well, staying on the cold side, the risk of overnight frosts, the snow and ice in places too. Low pressure still pushing north and eastwards across the country. An amber warning for snow across northern parts of England through the rest of Sunday. Some disruption continuing here We've seen 20 centimetres of snow in places. This will continue to build through the rest of the day, locally up to 40 centimetres for a few by the end of the day. Heavy rain also pushing in across western parts of the UK. Met-Obvious warnings in force here. Temperatures barely above freezing across the northern half of the UK. Icy stretches possible. Exceptionally mild in the south. Temperatures around 14 Celsius. Heavy rain continues to push north and eastwards across England and Wales this evening, but an icy evening to come across much of Scotland as temperatures fall below freezing. Further wintry showers feeding in. Heavy snow also affecting the borders region, so it could be some tricky travelling conditions for the Edinburgh area Monday morning. Heavy rain then for much of central southern parts of England and Wales, with Met-Obvious warnings out for that, leading to some localised flooding, difficult driving conditions as well. Snow continues across the higher ground of parts of northern England into Scotland. Rain nearer the coast and to lower levels, but there could be some snow to lower levels too. Further heavy rain pushing eastwards across southern counties. Cold and icy Northern Ireland and Scotland here. Temperatures below freezing. Perhaps not as cold as last night, but still temperatures below freezing, so an icy start to the day. An unsettled start across central and, well, many parts of England and Wales, with heavy snow over the high ground still, but turning more showery as we move through the afternoon tomorrow. Some brighter spells developing. Cold northerly wind for everyone, so where we saw mild air in the south today, it will feel much colder as we head to tomorrow. That's it from me. See you soon.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon, but the weather is so bad you really don't want to go out, to be honest with you. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch about the main story of the day, which is obviously the grooming gang scandal, which we have been discussing, and many of you are very angry, saying that, you know, this is still going on. One of you, I'm sorry, I've lost your name, says Dame Maggie Oliver points out that these kids violations are still happening today. That was from Andy. And Alistair says Labour councils, Labour voters and Starmer, a public inquiry into the grooming gangs will be harmful to Labour, and inevitably Starmer will put self and party before the national interest. Do wonder if that's the case, don't you? I must admit I'm a bit dubious about some of the reasoning why we're not getting a full inquiry myself. And Jim says, we know the reality of this scandal, and as usual, Labour are hiding the truth. The head boy wet streeting, interesting, singing the praises of his leader, can't be trusted to speak for himself. Yeah, lots and lots of people very, very angry about this. And Jackie says, nothing but excuses. The people want action, not excuses. So do keep your views coming in on that, gbnews.com/your say, and let me know what you're thinking about all the stories we're discussing today. And certainly if you're travelling around, how are you coping with the weather? What's it like where you are? You can either do gbnews.com/your say or message me on our socials at gbnews. Now, I'm afraid more bad news for the Prime Minister, as a new poll for the Mail has found that Starmer could be ousted within the next year. The poll said the public expects the Labour leader to last another year at most, with more than 2/3 saying he's doing badly, just half a year into the job. Not only that, but now a debate on the public petition calling for a general election will be held tomorrow, adding the Prime Minister a growing PR problems. Now, this poll, it's got over 2 million signatures calling for a general election straight away. Now, nothing will happen because we can't force a general election. Only the Labour Party can do that at the moment. But over 2 million people have signed this. So lettuce, I mean, it's quite the honeymoon period didn't last long, to put it mildly, did it? So...
No, it didn't last long. I'm not even sure there really was necessarily a honeymoon period. When we think back on the last 6 months, it's very much been a sort of rough start for them. And really what I think at the end of this is how they weren't better prepared when coming into government. They did have 14 years out of power. They had that time to prepare, and yet they still came in and made some what I would assume to be very obvious blunders going in, whether that was axing winter fuel payments straight out the gate, something that wasn't part of their manifesto, alienated people from their own backbench as well, or other things going forward now. This poll that we've got in the Mail today, it is reflective of what people are feeling and the public sentiment towards the government at the moment.
What do you make of it, Emma?
I'm not going to say that Labour have had a fantastic start. I do try to be reality-based.
Good, I'm glad you're not going down that road.
But I also, in being reality-based, I do want to take some issue with the way that the Mail have framed this story. For example, the Mail's headline is "Poll, Starmer will be out of number 10 in a year." Well, the people responding to this poll actually have no say over that, to be fair. There's not going to be a general election for another few years at least. And the internal process of the Labour Party will decide who is the leader of the Labour Party or not. And what Labour knows very well from the last decade, which I was talking about earlier, is it's actually quite hard to get rid of a Labour Party leader.
Yes,
significantly less hard, it turns out, than a Conservative leader, which is very easy to get, although they have changed their rules. But the thing I really want to take issue with on that headline is that actually here are the numbers as the poll found. Under a year, 31%, right? 2 years, 15%. At least 3 years, 39%. So 8 points higher than the number they led with in their headline, which I think is unfair to Mail readers, frankly. It's misleading. So, look, about 40% of the country think he'll be there at least 3 years. I think that's if I were an average political pundit, I mean, I am a very average political pundit, let's face it, I would say 3 years is probably quite a good guess, because if Starmer continues on the trajectory of popularity he's on now, the Labour Party will get restive. And there might well be a popularity contest, a movements within the party. Those will not happen in the next couple of years, because what they will want, what the political calculation of any political party who hasn't completely lost their minds, is that you bring in a new leader in time for them to still be quite fresh for the election, so it feels like a new start for the election.
But there is a lot of backlash within the party, on the ground, talk on the ground, against Keir Starmer.
There's a bit. There's not nearly as much as ginned up in a lot of the press coverage. Frankly, the happy spot for a Labour Party member is to be a bit unhappy with the party. I think that's true of any political party. Possibly exception of Reform, though they'll get there. Newer parties tend to be a bit more gung-ho in their membership. But, ask any Tory member how happy they are with how the Tories are doing, you'll get the same answer.
But the people that do seem to be very happy at the moment are Reform and the Reform supporters, who are growing in number.
They are. And, you showed a clip earlier of Nigel Farage coming out saying that his membership has hit 170,000. They are very much on this wave. They're capturing the media at the moment. But whether that can continue, if we look back and we think UKIP in 2015, they won 3.9 million votes, which is very, very similar to what Reform won in the 2024 election. And, well, time will tell, really, but whether there is a cap on these new parties coming in and winning a wave of votes, or whether it can continue, what we really need to see from Reform now is more detail on if they can continue this wave, if they went into government, what their policies are on major issues, what they are on health, immigration, the economy. We need more detail.
I completely agree with that. I think Reform are fantastic at capturing that public mood of sod the lot of you. Am I allowed to say that on?
No. We'd like to apologise for that to anyone that was offended by that language, but passionate debate.
But where I think they will, and I think they will absolutely do very well in the local elections, where there tends to be an anti-incumbency vote, I'm not happy with the way things are on the national picture vote. The Lib Dems have always done very well out of that. Reform may well do very well out of that on the right. Whether that translates into them having an offer that the country is willing to buy, I don't think we've known or seen that yet.
Be very interesting to see. Let me know what you think. If there was a general election in 2 years' time, as has been discussed today, who would you vote for? Would Nigel Farage be your next Prime Minister? I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News, and there's lots more coming up on today's show, as the Health Secretary promises to crack down on NHS waiting lists. Where have we heard that before? All that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This is a topic very close to my heart. I have become fully convinced that social media, smartphones are one of the primary causes of mental health problems in children and many other serious problems beside. Lots of governments are starting to talk about this, but the Australians are well ahead in their use of legislation. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I've got 3 young children and I'm really concerned about... I mean, they're too young to be on social media, but I'm really concerned about what lies ahead for them. I'm not sure I support what Australia's doing, not because I don't think it's a good idea to ensure that age verification is right. I'm just not sure that the age 16 is appropriate. But that's progress. If we effectively, as I do, accept the point that we need some sort of control, then we can move to a proper debate about whether that's 16, 14, 13, whatever it may be. And, of course, there are age restrictions on things like Facebook. I think, from memory, it is 13.
Yes, but it's a tick box.
But it's a tick box, so all you can do is you can just knock. If you're 11 years old, you can just predate your date of birth by 2 years, and you can get on. I think what Australia is proposing is interesting because it will stop young people, maybe without their parents' knowledge, short-circuiting the system because they're going to be asking for proper age verification and ID. That's definitely something we should do in the UK because it's enforced in the existing law. Query, is 16 the right age, Miriam?
I completely agree with it. It's something I actually said should have been done before. And I think what is good about it is that for a long time, a lot of governments have been saying that the actual social media companies should take more responsibility, but they're not going to because it hurts their bottom line. The most voracious users are younger users. So they will pledge that, oh, I'll put the tick box in, but the kid is the one who's going to actually tick the box. So doing something like this is saying that, OK, we will put in legislation that damages your bottom line. And I think it will force the hand because they've said it's only 12 months and they will reevaluate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. I just want to correct myself here. The petition to call for a new general election actually was just over 3 million. So my bad bag there. So by saying it was 2 million, it was over 3 million. So that's quite a harsh judgment on Keir Starmer, isn't it? And that is being debated tomorrow, as I said. There's not much it can forcibly change, but it's interesting that so many people have registered their unhappiness. Now, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has outlined the government's new plan to slash waiting lists for NHS patients. He has outlined plans to overhaul NHS app to give the public more choice over their treatment plans and preferred hospitals. OK, Lettice and Emma are still here with me. Lettice, I feel like I've heard this all before, so we're all going to be more digital, right? I tried to explain this to my mum this morning, mum in her mid-80s. Mum, you're going to have a wristwatch, you're going to get that instead of seeing your doctor. Didn't go down well.
No, and I can imagine that. But I must say, I am in favour of digitalising. You know, that is the way that the world... Yes, it's true.
You are. And I'm in favour too.
But I also think you should give credit to the older generations sometimes. Older people will have, whether it's a daughter, a granddaughter, a nurse who's younger who might help them, they can sort of learn this way. And the vast majority of people, you know, even people in their 60s, use phones all the time, use computers. They're very adept to it. What I found fascinating, though, is only 8% of people right now use the NHS app to book appointments, which is actually very, very low, considering we are all technologically aware and in this new age. But if it's going to get waiting lists down, you know, we've got 7.5 million people still on that backlog. If this will help, then let's go for it.
But, I mean, how much is this tech going to cost? Is it actually available yet? How reliable is it? I mean, and surely doctors, by seeing people face-to-face...
I mean, you're not using the app for your appointment. There are...
Yeah, you can use it for follow-up appointments. You decide whether you need a follow-up appointment. We're not doctors. How many of us know whether we need a follow-up appointment?
Well, I know whether I'm well or not.
Yeah, but you don't know the signs of certain illnesses. I mean, that's what the whole point of doctors, Emma.
But, I mean, the whole thing is you go to the doctor when you get the sign of an illness. You know, you'll still get your... Now I'm turning 50, as I may have mentioned once or twice. There are... you get your MOT, don't you? I get my MOT every year now.
In theory?
No, I do. They're brilliant at my surgery, and I've had my complaints about my surgery, but I got my MOT. I told them I'd given up drinking, and my nurse was like, "Really?" It was quite funny. I was like, "Yes."
For taking it off. But no, I mean, yeah, you're lucky. You do get an MOT. Many people don't.
I mean, I'm in London. There are places, particularly in more rural areas, where coverage is a lot more patchy. I accept that, and I think that's a problem. More with dentistry, I believe, than with GPs. But I think that, you know, the more that we can take the pressure off through making these things more available, giving us a wider range of options for interaction with doctors, it's no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, every little helps, but these are plans that are going to be announced tomorrow, so we'll await to see the devil in the detail, indeed. Thank you very much for that. Now, we have to take a quick break. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News. Loads more coming up on today's show, but first, yes, we have to have a look at the weather. Here's Greg Dewhouse with your details for you.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It remains on the cold side, looking ahead into next week, further risk of rain, which should be heavy at times, but then turning drier, but perhaps some weather systems moving into the south. At the moment, though, low pressure dominating the weather pattern, bumping into that cold air. We've seen heavy snow push its way northwards, milder air pushing in, though, across southern counties, turning this to rain quite widely. Through this evening, further snow is expected across the higher ground, particularly northern England into southern Scotland. Further disruption possible as we head into Monday morning. Localised flooding as rain pushes eastwards across the rest of England and Wales. Overnight, icy stretches developing across Northern Ireland, Scotland. Further wintry showers here. So an unsettled start to Monday morning. Frequent snow showers pushing in across northern Scotland. Some icy stretches, so do take care if you are travelling. Some clearer skies across the central belt, but then across the borders region, some heavy snow. There could be some tricky travelling conditions, as well as parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing further snow in places too. Wintry showers for Wales. Elsewhere, generally cloudy, rain across some eastern counties pulling away through the morning. So mental risk warnings remain in force for Monday morning for snow and ice across northern parts of the UK. Through the day, colder air seeps its way back southwards to all areas, so a mixture of some bright spells, but largely cloudy and frequent wintry showers pushing in from the north, though mostly falling as rain across southeastern parts, but a cold feeling day for everyone. Only a few degrees above freezing across the north, further south highs around 6 or 7, so much colder tomorrow compared to today. To end Monday, further wintry showers as this low pressure system pulls away. Some brisk winds for a time along some eastern coasts, and temperatures widely falling below freezing and staying on the cold side over the next few days as well. Temperatures really struggling, particularly by midweek.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang. From treats to holidays to fun times with the family, a totally tax-free £50,000 in cash could make you feel alive in 2025. And just one entry into the Great British Giveaway really could make £50,000 cash all yours. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Restaurant St. Bart's executive head chef Johnny Crowe creates ramen with a British twist, using only the finest UK-sourced produce. As the only restaurant in London to hold both a Michelin star and a green Michelin star, St. Bart's emphasises sustainability and the diversity of British ingredients. Johnny joins me now. Johnny, congratulations on having these 2 Michelins. How do you get a Michelin green star?
Probably a better question for the inspectors, but I mean, I think it's down to a lot of hard work.
What hoops do you have to go through?
So I think it's working every day on it. The sustainability isn't something that you just achieve and then therefore you have it and you can sort of relax. It's about every day trying to be better, trying to make a restaurant and a business that is overly sustainable.
So what things do you do to make it sustainable?
One of the main things that we've really tried to do is focusing on British produce, and actually, you know, part of that is about sustainability and food miles. A massive part of it for us was also about sort of helping the British economy and the farming economy and our fisheries as well. But yeah, no, the idea...
You have a lot of farms near St. Bart's, which is in the heart of the City of London.
Well, funnily enough, there's an amazing collective called Shrub Provisions, who we use a hell of a lot, who work with farmers all around East Sussex. So it makes a difference from flying it in from Kenya or somewhere else like that. But no, like a big part of it was, one, using British produce to cut down on food miles, but also helping sustain our farming industry.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, it's 2 o'clock on Sunday, the 5th of January, and this is the weekend on GB News. Now, let it snow. Central and northern England remains under an amber warning for snow, with disruption spreading across the country. But good news for football fans, Liverpool's game at Anfield against Man United will go ahead. And Wes Streeting defends the government's decision to not launch a national inquiry into the Rotherham grooming gang scandal, saying there's already been one, exclamation mark. He kind of shouted it. The Health Secretary did outline his support for the victims, encouraging more local authorities to pursue justice for those affected. And yes, it goes on. Farage versus Badenoch. The feud between Reform and the Tories deepens as Nigel Farage vows to win Kemi Badenoch's seat at the next general election. Can there be any winner on this war on the right, though? I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. So thank you very much for joining me on this Sunday afternoon. Really appreciate your company. You don't want to go out because the weather is, frankly, rubbish. We will be talking about that later as well. And we are talking about the big story of the week, which is the horrific grooming gang story and whether there should be a national open inquiry, which many Labour Party people don't seem that keen on. But let me know what you think about that, the weather, and all the stories we're discussing today, or anything you want to have a chat about, to be honest with you. It's very simple to get involved, and it's GB News gbnews.com/yoursay to join in the conversation. Remember, anything you want to talk about, particularly lots of you getting involved in the grooming gang conversation, and it is an important conversation, so please do let us know your thoughts. Keeping me company on today's show is a reporter from the Mail Online, Lettice Bromowski, and the political consultant and playwright Emma Burnell. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies. Lettice, that is actually your name, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lettuce like a vegetable.
Yeah.
A little different.
Yeah, and you were in trouble when it was Liz the lettuce as well.
Yeah.
But more about names later on. But before we get to all of that, here is the news with the very lovely named Sophia Hill.
Thank you, Dawn. Very good afternoon. It's just gone 2 o'clock. I'm Sophia Hill with your latest headlines in the GB newsroom. Our top story, heavy snow overnight is causing disruption across the country. Manchester and Liverpool Airport have now reopened their runways, but Leeds Bradford Airport remained closed until cleared of snow. The Met Office had issued 2 amber weather warnings for England and Wales, forecasting 3 to 7 centimetres of snow, with rain in lower areas. One warning covering most of northern England, including Leeds, Sheffield and the Lake District, still is in place until midnight tonight. Rural communities have been warned that they could be cut off due to the weather, with some areas facing up to a foot of snowfall. The UK Health Security Agency has issued cold weather health alerts, which will remain in place for all of England ahead of another week of low temperatures. Now, more NHS patients who need elective care will be able to decide where they are treated under new governmental plans to cut waiting lists. This falls under new upgrades coming to the NHS app, which the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says will shift the NHS into the digital age. Experts have welcomed the move, but warn that digital innovations must not create new barriers, and they come at the expense of excluding those without a smartphone. The Health Secretary spoke to GB News about his plans earlier on.
Prime Minister and I tomorrow are setting out the actions we are taking to get those waiting times down. And yes, that's about the investment the Chancellor announced in the budget, but it is also about the reform that's needed. We've got to modernise the NHS, giving patients more choice, more power, more control, more ease, more convenience over booking their appointments, choice about where to be treated. We'll do that through the NHS app, frankly, bringing the NHS in line with most other service providers in this country.
And GB News can exclusively reveal that the Prime Minister ignored a Rotherham whistleblower, Jane Senior's, bullying complaint after she exposed child abuse and corruption whilst he was leader of the opposition in 2020. GB News national reporter Charlie Peters told us the latest earlier on.
We've seen correspondence sent by Sir Keir Starmer's office that simply says, unfortunately, we won't be able to facilitate a meeting. Oh, but here is an online form for processing complaints. But fundamentally, I think what we've seen as a political reaction to this story, with both Kemi Badenoch from the Conservatives and Rupert Lowe from Reform and plenty of other commentators as well, they're all saying that, well, Jane Senior did have that national hero status. She was being bullied. Why didn't you take the time to meet with her, especially considering the reputation and fear that people had around the Labour Party and the CSE scandal and all the cover-ups?
The Labour Party spokesman has responded to claims, saying all complaints are treated seriously and thoroughly assessed in line with our rules and procedures. Complaints are assessed via a specific process independent of the leader's office, and this was clearly signposted in response to the correspondence at the time. Earlier, the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp spoke to GB News and called for a new national inquiry.
Do now need a full public inquiry to look at this comprehensively. That should include looking at all the towns involved. It should include looking at Keir Starmer's record as Director of Public Prosecutions.
Now, Tomoko Ituka, the world's oldest person, has died at the remarkable age of 116 in Japan. According to Guinness World Records, the Japanese woman was the oldest living person, following the death of 117-year-old Maria Branius last year. She was born on the 23rd of May 1908, and city officials said she died on the 29th of December in a care home in central Japan. And finally, more than 3,200 grey seal pups have been counted at the Norfolk Coastal Breeding Ground. While numbers remain high, this year's final count was 370 less than last year, possibly due to the seals finding new breeding grounds elsewhere. The pupping season generally starts at the beginning of November and finishes by the end of January, attracting thousands of visitors each winter. So if you're in the area, keep an eye out. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back in half an hour, but now it's back to Dawn.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Right, OK, now we have some live breaking news for you. I'm shocked, to be honest with you. I wasn't expecting this one. In the last few minutes, Nigel Farage has seemingly lost the support of Elon Musk. The Tesla and ex-CEO has said on his social media platform the following: the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. Frankly, a shocking turn. It comes just a few weeks after Farage travelled to Florida to meet with Musk about possible funding for the party. The two men indeed seem to be very, very close, didn't they? So this has literally just broken, literally minutes ago. We are waiting to hear from Reform. We're trying to get someone from Reform to comment on this, or certainly Nigel himself. A bit of a turn-up for the books. I still have Mail Online reporter Lettice Bramozzi with me and political consultant Emma Burnell. Emma, I'm a bit shocked by this one. It's just come out of the blue, and this, you can see on screen now the actual X post from Elon Musk, as we know Elon is very active on his own platform. The Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. And that was literally a couple of minutes ago. What do you make of that?
I'm really trying to keep a straight face. I mean, if you live by the tweet, you die by the tweet, is possibly my initial response. Elon, look, I'm going to say the same thing, in fairness to Reform, as I would have said last week when Elon Musk was tweeting about Jess Phillips or Keir Starmer. Frankly, before Elon Musk was a part of the Trump government, he could say what he wanted, he was a private citizen. He is now running a US government department and should be a little bit more careful about constantly interfering in the politics of another country. And while I personally find this hilarious, I also found the stuff about Jess Phillips really scary and worrying, and the stuff about Keir Starmer bloody stupid. But ultimately, when he's a private citizen, Musk can say what he likes on his own platform. As he is now part of an incoming US administration, I would be more careful.
But the thing is, I mean, there's been lots of interference from this country in American politics. Many Labour cabinet ministers had plenty to say about the politics of America.
And look how much they're having to row back on it now. So I would say that it's in terms of, there is what I have massive opinions about what the politics of America have. I don't have any formal role in the Labour Party. I think, it's perfectly fine before you are in government, possibly when you're trying to be the next government, less fine, to have views. But I just think that there is, a difference between Elon Musk, private citizen, owner of Tesla and X and whatever
Starlink
else
and everything, yeah. But we have
having ridiculous views.
I mean, we had Labour Party members going out there to help.
Yeah, Labour Party members have always gone out to help, and as we also had Conservative Party members.
No, I'm saying it both applies on both sides.
Nigel Farage is almost never out of Florida. I'm surprised that this has happened for that reason.
It's very interesting. What do you make of it, Lettice?
This is shocking. This is huge news. This is huge news. Simply because, as well, we've been talking about on this show all the time whether Conservatives and Reform, they're going head-to-head. Farage and Kemi going head-to-head. Farage needed that money that was essentially coming from Musk in order to continue this long campaign and this long march. They might get it other ways.
Farage would say it wasn't about the money, it was about the support.
But it would have been a huge inset for them. I wonder if this has anything to do with Musk's recent comments about Tommy Robinson and saying on Twitter that, he's a political prisoner, which is completely inaccurate. Yeah. He's in prison for contempt of court. Yeah. And we've got to remember that Farage actually left UKIP because of their obsession, that he called it, with Tommy Robinson. So whether Elon Musk was trying to force, now this is just my own opinion of this, force Farage to act a certain way with Tommy Robinson, and he's refused, But this is a classic.
Do you think
Elon
this
Musk.
is linked to the Tommy Robinson issue? The fact that Elon Musk is a supporter of Tommy Robinson?
That is really the only thing we've seen outright, that these two people, Farage and Musk, have a big disagreement over.
And Farage did come out yesterday and said very strongly that he does not support Tommy Robinson. He doesn't want him in the party.
It's really important to say, given that we've been focusing on the grooming gang story today, that what Tommy Robinson did and what he's in contempt of court for helps a court case to, put a court case in significant danger.
Just be clear,
that would have convicted the people who we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, he is serving time for contempt of court, nothing more. He wasn't being silenced.
He's
not contempt of court.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is classic Elon Musk as well. This almost feels like a knee-jerk reaction. It feels like they've just got off the phone and had an argument and he's put a tweet out. I wonder if he might row back on this, there might still be money, or if this really is the end.
OK, lots of you getting in touch about this, understandably. Peter Dooley says it's because Farage is no one's yes man, and he publicly disagreed with Musk about Tommy. Farage isn't strong enough on the issues we have, says Lisa. Meanwhile, CU Jimmy says Elon has now overstepped the mark. Well, this is what Nigel himself had to say yesterday about Musk being involved with reform. Let's have a look.
Could he possibly be a donor to the party? Yes. Is he supportive of the party? Absolutely. Does he support me personally? No question about that. If he does donate money, he'll have to do it legally through a UK company. But I'll tell you something. Whether he donates money to us or not, he makes us, with a young generation of people who view him as a hero figure, he makes us look cool. And I'll tell you what, there isn't much of that around in British politics these days.
Right, OK, but it was about looking cool. It wasn't about the money. And JF says on here, Nigel will care less, to be honest. UK has nothing to do with Musk. But, the challenge posed by reform cannot be overstated. I mean, Farage's party is now the main challenger to Labour in 89 of their seats. Do you think Musk putting this tweet out will make any difference to the support reform have, or will it encourage reform support?
I don't think... From what I understand, reform supporters are quite online. They have an older profile, but they are more online than other people. So this may have more impact than it might do for other parties, because they are quite an online group of people. What we're seeing, and it's fascinating, and one of the conversations that we had during the break was, is reform Nigel Farage or is reform? And if we're going to see a sort of showdown between two big right-wing personalities, Elon Musk and Nigel Farage, and if this becomes sort of there can only be one winner, Highlander-style deathmatch, it will be interesting to see where that very online group of people go and if it splinters them.
Yeah, and I think that's important to say, like, reform, just a year ago, Farage wasn't actually even going to be running in the general election. He wasn't going to be part of this. And now he has, and he's continuously said himself that, he can be this gateway to America. He can help whisper in Trump's ear, alongside Peter Mandelson, the new US ambassador that we have there. But if that relationship's broken down completely, are we going to have to rely fully on Labour to take this forward, who've said multiple potentially inappropriate or diplomatically wrong things towards the US government? Is that where our reliance lies?
Well, exactly. And as I see it, says on... So please do keep your messages coming in, gbnews.com/your say. You say Musk has always been Frit, always has been. Next, it will be his support for Donald Trump heading south. Be very interested to see what happens. In any case, on Friday, Farage brushed off Musk's support for Tommy Robinson. Let's have a listen to what he had to say then.
He's very supportive of me. He's very supportive of the party. He sees Robinson as one of these people that fought against the grooming gangs. But, of course, the truth is Tommy Robinson's in prison, not for that, but for contempt of court for the third occasion. Different human beings have different points of view on different things. That's fine. I'm relaxed about it.
Be very interesting to see. We haven't heard any more from Reform themselves on this particular issue. But do you think, Lettice, it will affect support for the party?
I'm not sure immediately, but I think there will be knock-on effects from this. I don't think people are only voting for reform in this country because Elon Musk has told them to. I do think people have, their own right and their own decisions to support the party because, they do funnel that populist vote, that anti-establishment kind of vote. But I do think without that support and without that money, although Farage denies that money would do anything, it will have an impact on their campaigning levels, on how many MPs they're fielding in constituencies or candidates, they're fielding, and on what they can do when it comes to the general election or even the local elections next year. You do need money in these things. So this will have an impact, but I don't think it's going to change immediately voters' views on reform.
I mean, I think the question is, does that money then go somewhere else? Yeah. Or does the money just not come in at all?
He's been speaking a lot about, Elon Musk seems to be supporting all of these, right of conservative parties in different countries. He's been speaking with the
AfD in Deutschland.
Exactly, AfD in Deutschland. He's been speaking, with France and their right party. So he's very supportive of the general cause. So whether that money now he thinks will be better suited...
Doesn't bother with Britain and goes straight into the other into EU countries.
I mean, we have seen many Conservative Party members and MPs. I mean, Marco Longhi, who you might say, he lost his Dudley North seat in July, join Reform recently, and that's after Dame Andrea Jenkins and Suella Braverman's husband. So they are attracting a lot
Tim Montgomery, who founded Conservative Home.
Exactly. A lot of experienced Conservative members going to them. So it'll be very interesting to see.
But there's definitely something I think they have to say about how the Conservatives have lost their voice, rather than, again, this growth of reform. There might be support for reform, but a lot of these people are changing because they feel the Conservatives maybe isn't the conservatism that they initially joined. The party has changed. And I think Kemi's got a lot to do with finding the voice of the party again.
Yeah, which I think she's really struggling with.
I think struggling with because Farage is such an orator.
I mean, I'm not going to claim this is my line. I think I heard it on the FT's podcast. But her New Year message was essentially like a holding, like your call is important to us.
Well, I mean, you could say that Keir Starmer's was vaguely AI generated as well. To be honest with you,
it was a classic New Year's message, didn't say much. But Kemi Badenoch's, came out very, very late. Didn't come out till afternoon on the day, which is unusual if you're trying to get into the news cycle. But also literally just said, watch this space, rather than we're going to have an exciting year where we'll be focused on X, Y and Z, which is basically the generic what you do.
OK, well, we are discussing here the fact that Elon Musk appears to have withdrawn his support for Nigel Farage as leader of Reform Party. It doesn't say that he's withdrawing support for reform, but he's mentioning that Nigel Farage is not the man to lead that party. Now, many of you are getting such as breaking news, just literally happened on social media worldwide, wouldn't it? On X, obviously. Dave says, well, it would have been nice to have Elon Musk on board, but it's not the end of the world, onwards and upwards. And Nick says, has Mr. Musk been on the Powell cream? I don't know. Is that Baileys? I don't know. But keep your messages coming in. Earlier this week, the father of Elon Musk spoke to GBNews and said that Nigel Farage is not a strong man to lead the UK. Here's what he had to say.
I think we have to be more tough here, I suppose. I don't know. We've got irons and everything. But anyway, no. I look at Farage. I see he talks right. He doesn't look very strong to me. It doesn't particularly look like a strong man to me. You need a very strong man to get England out of the sin. You need a very strong man. And, I don't know if he's the man.
Interesting comments there. What do you think he means by not a strong man, not a strong enough man, Lettuce?
Oh, gosh, I'm not 100% sure, but he clearly doesn't have a faith in Farage to take the party through. And whether that's because, Farage does seem to be a sort of lone wolf within the party sometimes. He is leading the party, but if you took Farage away from reform, what would reform be? And whether he sees that as the sort of weakness of reform to be, it's not the party without Farage, and maybe it wouldn't be getting the support it has right now without him.
Actually, that's an interesting point. Do you think it is because people perceive reform to be the one man, Nigel Farage, and without him,
I think
what is there?
That is the biggest problem that reform have. When I manage teams, I constantly talk about making sure that everything's in the shared drive. Put it in the shared drive. And the phrase I always use, up to the point where someone asked if I was going to push them under a bus, is what would I do if you fell under a bus tomorrow? And I think Reform really have that problem in that they are very much perceived, not just as a one-man band, but when you think about the other person you've heard of from Reform, which if you're lucky, if he's lucky, is Richard Tice, you know, not only was Richard Tice not seen as dynamic enough, but was seen as so undynamic that Nigel Farage had to step in during the election campaign, take it all back over. So there's the number two isn't even waiting in the wings.
OK, right, let's just read some of your comments out. Andy says Musk needs to confirm this. Well, we are just going on what is on his social media platform. And ATG says, I know where Musk is coming from. I really want Reform to do well, but that is my fear too. He needs to wake up to the things not pertaining only to the influential, but to the plight of our Tommy Robinson, for example. Lots of you are thinking it is linked to the disagreement over Tommy Robinson. Meanwhile, Poundland Shopper says Musk is trolling you and the mainstream media. I had to check it wasn't April the 1st. Well, OK, let's see what happens, won't we? But do keep your messages coming in. gbnews.com/your say. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News. We'll have more on that breaking news story that Musk has dropped his support for Nigel Farage in just a few minutes. Stay with us. We'll see you soon.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values or would it be a step backward?
Or how do we even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, I don't know, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this afternoon. We are covering the live-breaking story that Elon Musk appears to have withdrawn his support for Nigel Farage as leader of the Reform Party. He says that as a leader, he's not strong enough. That is something he put on his social media platform literally just a few minutes ago. Now, we are trying to get some kind of confirmation from Elon Musk's camp that obviously his account hasn't been hacked or anything like that, but it does seem to be the case.
It's his platform. He's not going to say he's been hacked on it.
And stranger things happen. There are lots of Elon Musks on that platform, believe me. Many of them follow me, which is slightly weird. But lots of you have been getting in touch and sending in your thoughts on this story, so please do keep them coming as well. A lot of people would say that Rupert Lowe is the right man for the job, says Matt. And meanwhile, someone called Inevitable West says absolutely spot on. Nigel won't even talk about mass deportations. Kevin says, agree with Elon Musk. Nigel Farage is more interested in himself than the country. And lots of you pointing out that they have probably fallen out over the Tommy Robinson issue. Remember, Elon Musk said that Tommy Robinson was in prison for his a political prisoner, basically, and should be freed. And Nigel Farage said that, no, Tommy Robinson would never be allowed to join the Reform Party. He didn't want him involved in it and has always distanced himself. But this announcement from Elon does just come hours after Nigel Farage defended Elon Musk after the billionaire attacked the UK government's response to the grooming gangs on X. You know, Musk suggested Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute gangs and said the Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips, deserved to be in prison. You know, there were strong words coming from Elon Musk, but Nigel Farage did defend him in saying that and said he had a right to say that. So it is a curious one, and we will bring you up to date as soon as we can. Keep your thoughts coming in on this. Do you understand why Elon Musk has done this? Who do you think, if it's not Nigel Farage leading reform, should lead the reform on from here? They are doing incredibly well. They are, the membership is going up on an hourly basis. They are in pole position to overtake Labour in many of their seats, and we have the local elections coming up in May. We are waiting to get some political voices on this for you, but at the moment I have Mail Online reporter Letty Pomorski and political consultant Emma Bellner on the panel for me. Now, what do you think? This just does come, Emma, just hours after, as I've just read out there, Nigel Farage defended Elon Musk for Elon Musk's very strong words attacking the Labour government and Keir Starmer and Jess Phillips in particular over the Rotherham grooming gangs.
Yeah, and this is the problem. I'm reminded of the old adage of the frog and the scorpion. And the scorpion convinces the frog to carry him across the river and says, but if I sting you, we'll both die. And then halfway through across the river, the scorpion, of course, stings the frog. And it says, it's my nature. And if you play with people who you have seen behave in this manner quite erratically, 1 minute he's a massive liberal, anti-climate change, the next minute he's a Trump supporter, then he's having this row with Trump supporters about immigration. If you get involved with people who are that erratic, do not be surprised when their support turns out to be fair weather.
OK, Lettuce, what do you make of it?
Yeah, no, you know, I slightly think that is kind of... We saw this going in that general direction from the sort of hyperbolic tweets that we see Elon pumping out day after day. You sort of understand that he does have quite an intense reaction to it. I would bet money, though, that when that tweet came out, Reform was the first time they were hearing about it as well. Yeah. I don't think there would have been forewarning, and I know we've gone to them for comment and we're looking for one, but I bet you their office is scrambling right now, lunchtime on a Sunday, trying to get to the bottom of this. I would also say that this probably does have something to do with Tommy Robinson, as some of the commentators have been saying.
It does
online.
seem, the timing does seem quite...
Yeah. And obviously Elon's come out, he's said that Tommy Robinson online is this political prisoner and that he's been in prison against his will, he's been in solitary confinement. That is all false, that is fake news.
Well, I'm sure he's imprisoned against his will.
Well, yes, against his will, yeah, that's probably true. But he's in prison for contempt of court.
Absolutely.
You know, he does have a string of criminal charges against him, and that is the reason he's in prison. And we know that Farage left the UKIP party over clashes or with Tommy Robinson, over the party's obsession with Tommy Robinson. So there is bad blood, there's bad water there. And that, as far as we can see right now, seems to be the only thing that Elon Musk and Nigel Farage could possibly disagree on. But it will be very interesting to see, you know, the reaction from Farage's loyal supporters and whether this changes the way they vote.
We are waiting to get some comment from Reform. We asked, and we will bring you that as soon as we have that. But you are all getting in touch. Lots of you want to talk about this. And Diane says, shocked but not shocked after the GB News interview with Elon Musk's dad the other day, where he called Farage a weak man. So please, Elon's dad did say he didn't think Farage was a strong leader. So lots of you getting in touch. Musk wants Rupert Lowe in charge and support from Tommy Robinson to come from Reform.
I think there's
all of Rupert Lowe's family in your comment section.
I also
there's a lot of support.
There's a lot of support. The conversation that we seem to have had has been around what Elon Musk, or what people are commenting online, I should say, what Elon Musk thinks is right for our British political system. You know, this man doesn't understand British politics. He was tweeting yesterday about how King Charles should dissolve the government, use his powers to dissolve government.
Technically he can.
Technically he can. But, you know, realistically,
I think the monarchy would not last long if he tried.
You live in the country, you understand that that is not really within his power. And I think that there is a sort of concern here around America's influence in our political system. We both get involved in each other's, but there should sort of be a line drawn when what Elon Musk thinks should be the next leader is what people are using as their base point.
But lots of people are saying that they agree with Elon Musk. Susanna says Reform have already lost votes after what Farage said about Tommy Robinson's situation. I feel more will follow if Nigel and the Reform Party don't change their position. Interesting. Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/.com. We're going to take a quick break now, and after that we'll be coming back with our political editor who'll be bringing us more up on this breaking story. But first, let's get the news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Thank you, Dawn. Very good afternoon. It's just gone 2:30, and we start with some breaking news in the last half hour. Elon Musk has called for a new leader of Reform UK. The Tesla and ex-CEO has said on his social media platform, the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. This shocking turn comes just a few weeks after Farage travelled to Florida to meet with Musk about possible funding for his party. This news also comes less than 24 hours after Farage said that there was no question on Musk supporting him personally. Now, heavy snow overnight is causing disruption across the country. Manchester and Liverpool Airport have now reopened their runways, but Leeds Bradford's airport remains closed until it is cleared of snow. The Met Office had issued 2 amber weather warnings for England and Wales, forecasting 3 to 7 centimetres of snow, with rain in lower areas. One warning covering most of northern England, including Leeds, Sheffield and the Lake District, is in place until midnight tonight. Rural communities have been warned that they could be cut off due to the weather, with some areas facing up to a foot of snowfall. The UK Health Security Agency has issued cold weather health alerts, which will remain in place for England ahead of a week of low temperatures. Now, GB News can exclusively reveal that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, ignored a Rotherham whistleblower, Jane Senior's bullying complaint, after she exposed child abuse and corruption whilst he was leader of the opposition in 2020. GB News national reporter Charlie Peters told us the latest earlier on.
We've seen correspondence sent by Sir Keir Starmer's office that simply says, unfortunately, we won't be able to facilitate a meeting. Oh, but here is an online form for processing complaints. But fundamentally, I think what we've seen as a political reaction to this story, with both Kemi Badenoch from the Conservatives and Rupert Lowe from Reform and plenty of other commentators as well, they're all saying that, well, Jane Senior did have that national hero status. She was being bullied. Why didn't you take the time to meet with her, especially considering the reputation and fear that people had around the Labour Party and the CSE scandal and all the cover-ups?
Now, a Labour Party spokesperson has responded to claims saying all complaints are treated seriously and thoroughly assessed in line with our rules and procedures. Complaints are assessed via a specific process independent of the leader's office, and this was clearly signposted in response to this correspondence at the time. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Tatiana Sanchez will have more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
4 News. 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 4
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It remains unsettled through the rest of Sunday and much of next week as well, staying on the cold side, the risk of overnight frosts, the snow and ice in places too. Low pressure still pushing north and eastwards across the country. An amber warning for snow across northern parts of England through the rest of Sunday. Some disruption continuing here. We've seen 20 centimetres of snow in places. This will continue to build through the rest of the day, locally up to 40 centimetres for a few by the end of the day. Heavy rain also pushing in across western parts of the UK. Metovis warnings in force here. Temperatures barely above freezing across the northern half of the UK. Icy stretches possible. Exceptionally mild in the south. Temperatures around 14 Celsius. Heavy rain continues to push north and eastwards across England and Wales this evening, but an icy evening to come across much of Scotland as temperatures fall below freezing. Further wintry showers feeding in. Heavy snow also affecting the borders region, so it could be some tricky travelling conditions for the Edinburgh area Monday morning. Heavy rain then for much of central southern parts of England and Wales, with Metovis warnings out for that, leading to some localised flooding, difficult driving conditions as well. Snow continues across the higher ground of parts of northern England into Scotland. Rain nearer the coast and to lower levels, but there could be some snow to lower levels too. Further heavy rain pushing eastwards across southern counties. Cold and icy Northern Ireland and Scotland here, temperatures below freezing. Perhaps not as cold as last night, but still temperatures below freezing, so an icy start to the day. An unsettled start across central and, well, many parts of England and Wales, with heavy snow over the high ground still, but turning more showery as we move through the afternoon tomorrow. Some brighter spells developing. Cold northerly wind for everyone, so where we saw mild air in the south today, it will feel much colder as we head to tomorrow. That's it from me. See you soon.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And with me, Dawn Neeson. Now, we are coming back to the live breaking story about Elon Musk seemingly pulling support for Nigel Farage as leader of the Reform Party. We're bringing you that live breaking story throughout the show. But Nana will be bringing her take on it later at 3 o'clock, and she joins us now to tell us what's coming up on her show. Nana.
Well, Dawn, actually, one of those clips where I actually had the interview with Nigel Farage yesterday, and I asked him whether Elon Musk's support for Tommy Robinson is worrying. And that response was one that we've been playing as it goes. So I was interesting that Elon has now responded. But we'll carry on with the conversation because it's a big one, really, because Elon Musk is very powerful. Do you support him? Do you think that Elon Musk has a point? Yesterday, we looked at the betting odds, and the betting odds were heavily in favour of Nigel Farage becoming the next Prime Minister. I wonder if they've changed. Also on the show, Sarah Davidson, she's a divorce coach. She'll be live in the studio because tomorrow is National Divorce Day, where loads of people who've spent time with their other halves have spent too much time with them and think, oh, I'm sick of you. And lots of people file for divorce on Monday, tomorrow. So we'll be speaking to Sarah Davidson about that. Plus, whether you think that Keir Starmer will last another year as leader of the Labour Party. Loads, all of that on the way.
Brilliant. That sounds a cracking show coming up there. Lots of relationships breaking up, indeed. Thank you very much. That's Nana at 3 o'clock. Now, our political editor, Christopher Hope, is about to join us. I just want to read this message out. It's coming from Danny Roscoe, and he's pointed out to a tweet that Elon Musk put out this morning. Nigel Farage was on TV saying he will explain to Elon Musk that Tommy Robinson is in prison for contempt of court, not for exposing the grooming gangs. Elon Musk, as he does, obviously picked up his phone and said, I know he's in prison for contempt of court, for God's sake, only using stronger language, but there is no justification for such a long prison sentence or for solitary confinement. Well, one fact is that Tommy Robinson is in solitary confinement through his own choice, by the way. That hasn't been imposed on him. But let's go to our political editor, Christopher Hope, now, who brings us more on this breaking story. A bit of a shocker. Hello, Christopher. Thank you very much for joining us today. What do you make of this story?
Well, this is certainly a shock, Dawn. It's not something we're expecting. I was with Nigel Farage on Friday night at that event in Leicester. He was in Chelmsford yesterday. He trumpeted 170,000 members. He's targeting Labour's membership, unbelievably. It's all been, the wind's been blowing very strongly in his own direction behind his sails since really Boxing Day, when he got into a row with Kemi Badenoch about whether the membership they claim is a real number. Now it's been vetted by the FT, not a friendly newspaper, by the Telegraph, by Sky News. So we do think these figures are correct. So Elon Musk saying this is fascinating and extraordinary. It's worth just understanding what Musk did say. He said that he felt that the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. I think Elon Musk may have to wait a bit to get his wish is. This party, as far as I understand it, is still a limited company with 15 shares on issue, 8 of them controlled or owned by Nigel Farage. So he basically runs the show. It's his party, fair enough. He did this when he set up the party after the Brexit Party folded, because he wanted to make sure that he had control, that he wasn't going to be moved around and messing about with lengthy committees that he found when he was with the UK Independence Party. I've been in touch with Nigel Farage in the past few minutes, and I've asked him, is that still the case, that you do still own the shares in the company? But all he said is that all the changes, the reforms he announced back in September on GB News with Zia Youssef to give members more of a say, are all with the Electoral Commission, he says, after extensive work with our lawyer. Expect resolution very soon. So the way to remove Nigel Farage, if that's what Musk wants, I don't think is there yet. It may be soon. There is a complex way to remove him. It can be pushed forward and waiting for the commission to approve. So what's happening here is the information is now with the Electoral Commission, and when that gets approved, then the changes can take place. And there are ways to remove Farage if people want to in the party. It must go to his committee and be voted on by them, the committee who runs the party. But it's certainly a shock. I think Nigel Farage, by his own account, had a good meeting with Elon Musk in Mar-a-Lago. They talked for an hour about how to use data to target floating voters. A problem that Reform UK has is it doesn't know where voters live in the same way the main parties do. So Musk offers a shortcut to that kind of information, and that's why it was so valuable. In many ways, Farage was downplaying the scale of $100 million donation from Musk, saying almost it's as important is the data and the support in finding out where voters live. Farage, it's a worry for him, I think, because as things stand, we were expecting some form of donation from Musk, maybe some further intervention, maybe something else from him. We don't know, but this is certainly a surprise. I have to say this. But the problem, finally, Dawn, the problem that Nigel Farage has got is he can't really go near Tommy Robinson politically. He's been very clear from the beginning that he left UKIP back in the day, back in 2018, saying the party was getting too close to Tommy Robinson. Politically, for the main political conversation in this country, you just can't go near Robinson. He is the wrong way for this party to go. And that's indeed why Lee Anderson, who's the party's chief whip, shouted down 2 heckles at that Eastern Midlands event on Friday night when they said, bring back Tommy Robinson, and Lee Anderson told them where to go. And that's frankly where the party needs to be and must be seen to be saying.
Yeah, I mean, Christopher, how important is Elon Musk's money to the Reform Party?
Well, that's a great question, because I'm not sure it's as important as it used to be, because you've got this rather impressive financier now with the party, Nick Candy. He's the treasurer. He's promised a 7-figure sum. That's over £1 million. He's had 3 other former Tory donors pledging or suggesting they might offer up £1 million each or so. That's £4 million. We're getting into the area of the party being on a very strong financial footing. They want to raise as much as £35 million by the election. That's beating the figures raised by the Tory and Labour Party, and Musk would have helped that. And there may be a way back from this, but we know Nigel Farage wants to go and speak with Musk when he's over in America in a fortnight's time for the inauguration of Donald Trump. And it might be there that he can explain to Musk the issues that people have in this country with someone like Tommy Robinson, and why going down that route will not help him win the election.
Well, Chris, I mean, this seems to be the issue that they're falling out over, isn't it? I mean, Nigel Farage did say, that on TV that he would explain to Elon Musk the reason why Tommy Robinson is in prison and why, he couldn't be allowed to join Reform or link up with Reform. To which Elon Musk responded on Twitter very aggressively, I know he's in prison for contempt of court, FFS, but there is no justification for such a long prison sentence or solitary confinement. Now, ignoring the solitary confinement thing, we know that is Tommy Robinson's own choice. But do you think this falling out is, A, entirely about Tommy Robinson, and do you think there's any way back for the two men to come to be friends again after this?
Well, there's always a way back, and I think Elon Musk often says that he tweets things that are the front of his mind. He can take them back if he wants to. I mean, this isn't set down in stone. It's not a formal break with Nigel Farage, but it's certainly an issue for him to resolve, I think, for Farage. I think Musk is showing maybe his political naivety about this country if he thinks that a deal can be done for Farage to do something with Tommy Robinson. That is just not going to happen. And I think the fact that Musk is saying this shows he's out of step, really, with how our politics works here. He may want that from America, but I can't see it happening here. And I think we've seen enough language from the key people around Nigel Farage, including Farage himself, to show that.
OK, Christopher Hope, thank you very much for that. We will be bringing you up to date on this story as much as we can, and Christopher will let us know if indeed he does speak to Nigel Farage and we get a response from him. I'm Dawn Newsom, this is GB News. Up next, we'll be speaking with Edwina Curry for her insight into this incredible breaking story. We'll see you soon.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Our next guest has a rather unique career story. She was working at a pub, aged 18, and Holly Farmer was spotted by a modelling scout, and it turned out to be her lucky day.
Scott Yoss Clark sent this message to Holly.
Holly, 18, 5'10", she does not belong in a pub. And I absolutely love that, Holly, because it's a bit like Dirty Dancing, where it's like, you can't put baby in the corner. Holly does not belong in a pub. You belong on the catwalk. What was that moment like for you when you were scouted by Yoz?
It was crazy. I have to say I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. Like, I was just on my lunch break. I was working at a pub, so... I was on my lunch break, walking, going to Primark, and...
You're going to Primark?
Got stopped by yours.
And how did that interaction go?
Well, first question was, how tall are you? So, 5'10".
Very much that.
Yeah, then he gave me his card and asked, explained everything, that he's a model scout, obviously.
Yeah, because generally when I scout, especially when I get close to that person, I tend to look in their eyes, and when you see something there, it's like everything works on the face, and then the eyes gives you away.
Well, you've spotted a gem in Holly. I mean, you can tell even when you walked in, you are built to be a model.
I did my first fashion week here in London and then went to Paris, and it was really fun. Wow. Now it's my full-time job. It's a bit crazy, to be honest.
Wow.
To be able to say that modelling is my full-time job now. Some brands will ask you to be a bit more serious, and then others not.
So it depends on the client's request as well. Ellie, give us your best model face. Ready? 3. I wonder if we can come back. 3, 2, 1. Very nice.
High fashion. Yeah. But you guys do all contorted moves, don't you?
Yeah.
All this high fashion. Do yours?
I'm just permanently living in model
You actually
model
are,
world.
though. He actually
this
does.
is it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson, where we are discussing the live breaking story of Elon Musk putting out on social media platform X the fact that he doesn't think Nigel Farage is the man to lead the Reform Party. He's not strong enough. It's a breaking story. It's just happened within the last hour or so. So we are trying to bring you the latest news we can on it. We're waiting to hear from Nigel Farage himself, and as soon as we do, we will bring you that live, so don't go anywhere. But we're joined now by former Parliamentary Under-Secretary for State for Health, Edwina Currie, for her take on the political ramifications of this story. Edwina, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Well, I mean, to me, this story came as a bit of a shock. What do you make of it?
Oh, I'm not in the least surprised, because Elon Musk, I think, is a fair-weather friend. I would much rather he be a friend of some of my neighbours than a friend of mine. I've just tweeted, I have retweeted his posts on X with a lot of smiley faces, because I'm not in the least surprised, Dawn. He's a man who has automatic reactions to emotions. Politics is often about emotions, as you and I both know, but it's also about real live events, real live people. I mean, the other day, Musk was saying, he was calling on the king to call a general election. And I riposted, well, actually, you don't understand the Constitution. The king in this country hasn't had that power since the Glorious Revolution of the 1680s. You go look it up. Musk is a brilliant, brilliant man. He is a genius engineer. But when it comes to politics, I think he's pretty useless. And as far as the Reform Party is concerned, I think he's been a very false friend as well.
Do you think this will harm the Reform Party?
Oh, I do hope so.
OK. I love the way you sit on the fence, Edwina. I've always admired that in you. But, no, I mean, they are in pole position with 89 of Labour's seats in particular. So do you think it will harm Reform?
Well, it's a very interesting thing to have in the first year of a government that's got a massive majority. This is often when you find that different parties who have done well or badly in the election start to fall out. And there are some fundamental discussions going on about the future of the country, not least about immigration.
Edwina, I'm so sorry. We are running out of time, but thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Now, we will be carrying on coverage of this story in Nana's show after the break, but thank you to Lettice and to Emma for joining me. Please do stay tuned. Every Coffin's bit of this story will be brought to you in Nana's show, which starts right after this, but before the weather.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It remains on the cold side, looking ahead into next week, further risk of rain, which should be heavy at times, but then turning drier, but perhaps some weather systems moving into the south. At the moment, though, low pressure dominating the weather pattern, bumping into that cold air. We've seen heavy snow push its way northwards, milder air pushing in, though, across southern counties, turning this to rain quite widely. Through this evening, further snow is expected across the higher ground, particularly northern England into southern Scotland. Further disruption possible as we head into Monday morning. Localised flooding as rain pushes eastwards across the rest of England and Wales. Overnight, icy stretches developing across Northern Ireland, Scotland. Further wintry showers here. So an unsettled start to Monday morning. Frequent snow showers pushing in across northern Scotland. Some icy stretches, so do take care if you are travelling. Some clear